Entering the Mayo experience.
That Mayo experience. That Mayo experience. That Mayo experience. Experience.
Welcome to another edition of the Dog or Pass podcast. This for UFC 241. Here, I'll level with you guys here. Cody's going to be away in it doesn't
Nova Scotia, the Maritimes.
You know what? I'm
and
giving
then
too much away. He's on vacation. It's none of your business, but Cody's going to be away. So we had to record this in advance. The odds are out. There is no DraftKings pricing. We're going to kind of guesstimate DraftKings pricing as we go through the thing or through the card. We'll talk about who we think, based on what we think the prices are going to be.
We'll try to set the price ourselves.
We're going to set our price ourselves. But more or less, we're going to go through. We're going to pick winners and do all that stuff. So, yeah, Cody Saftic, you enjoy your vacation.
Yeah.
It'll be nice. Get
long
away.
Long overdue.
Yeah, buddy. So, yeah, UFC 241.
You know what?
Fine looking card.
Yeah, exactly. It's the finest looking offer in the UFC has presented us in quite some time. I think fight fans all over. Like, this is the kind of card you don't feel bad about paying for. And this is the kind of card you get your friends together and you go out and you do something. Like, it's got that big fight feel. And I know International Fight Week, it used to have that big fight feel. You used to get a card on the Friday and a card on the Saturday and then, you know, some type of carrot. You got John Jones this year and you got John Jones, Giagos, Santos. It is what it is. The UFC's having trouble having these appealing cards, these marketable cards. And this is a full, complete offering. As you and I talked about, like, yeah, what a pain in the ass it'd be if the main event was to fall off a card like this. But you look at last week, Colby Covington versus Robbie Lawler. If that newer card loses the main event, it's the worst card of all times. Mm-hmm. You look at last week in Uruguay. If that main event falls off, this card is a hurting. Whereas this has a lot of good supporting cast.
I mean,
you're telling me
versus Paddy Holohan. That did end up main eventing a fight card in Ireland.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that was pretty bad.
Absolutely bad. But this is the case that if I woke up and someone told me Stipe or Cormier are out of the fight, geez, I would be upset. Man, that sucks. I really want to see that fight. But the flip side to that would be an upgrade of one of two things. You would either get Nate Diaz, Anthony Pettis 5 rounds, which is I'd much rather see that than 3, or we might get Yoel Romero versus Paulo Costa as a 5 round instead of a 3. To be honest, I might even be willing to sacrifice seeing Cormier versus Stipe 2 if I can see one of those in a 5 rounder. So yeah, this is a very nice card from top to bottom. Very excited. Too bad we had to shoot it in advance and kind of guess the DraftKings pricing, but this will be interesting because we'll see based on where we set it, where we like it. If it gets a little higher than this, I wouldn't play it. If it sits around that, it'd be a good value play, and then we'll be able to see in real time kind of when it's released and how far we were.
So that kind of leads me to this week's challenge. Obviously, we are doing this card before Montevideo, so our next episode, I don't even know the card for the next after UFC 241. The card is. It doesn't really matter.
Something
we will
on
announce.
ESPN
we will
Plus.
announce
UFC on ESPN Plus 15 or something. I think that's what it is.
Yeah,
on the top of my head.
Those numbers wherever. It doesn't matter where they are. Either way, we will announce 2 winners: the one for the Uruguay card and the winner for the UFC 241 card on that next episode. So what you're gonna have to do for this episode is give the episode a like. Nothing is possible without that. Number 2, leave your DK handle. Number 3, we talked about it. Lots of big fights, a lot of guys making their returns.
Fan favorites.
Who are you most excited to see return? You got Miocic coming back after what seems like forever. Nate Diaz coming back after
what has
years
been forever
because he hasn't had to fight because he got all that money.
Yoel Romero, is there one single fighter is there a fighter that you're more interested in seeing in any fight? Like he always brings it.
Paulo Costa's been out for a while for reasons.
Hannah Cyphers making that sophomore out, looking to keep it undefeated in the UFC.
MMA gambling Twitter loves her. Corey Sandhagen pulled off that win against Johnny Lineker, which is pretty impressive.
Anthony Pettis, Paulo Costa.
There's options. And my boy Clay Collard making his, that is my answer. Clay Collard getting back, like based on the direction of the UFC is going in right now, Clay Collard is the type of guy that Like this, Dana White's Contender Series is made for Clay Collard. He doesn't necessarily finish people, but he fights so aggressively that even if he doesn't finish, it's like a fight of the night performance anyway. The guy can take damage. He's not exactly the most talented, skilled guy, but like he had a tough run. He lost to Gabriel Benitez. He lost to Max Holloway. And then he had a split decision loss to Thiago Trator. And that ended up, being his final demise.
Yeah, he
but
was
it's
like
this
23
guy
at the time.
had like fight of the night performances. Like he can take a beating. And in the direction that the UFC is headed right now, Clay Collard will fit right in. But let's get into the main event here. We have Daniel Cormier taking on Stipe Miocic. Daniel Cormier minus 145 favorite. Stipe Miocic is plus 125. We saw this fight. And Daniel Cormier knocked him out in the first round, but it's heavyweight. And not all fights are going to be the exact same. Stipe was at least close to a minus 300 favorite in their first fight against each other. People were getting posting plus 220 Daniel Cormier tickets and so on and so forth. Cormier has been out for a long time. We didn't know he was supposed to fight Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar, obviously. It was probably a publicity stunt to try to gain some more money for himself.
Yeah, it's a great bargaining chip if I'm going into a contract negotiation with the WWE.
Cormier's been out for a long time. The guy's already 40 years old. Stipe Miocic, he's one of the rare people who was like, I'm not fighting unless it's for the belt. It's just like, oh, Stipe, this isn't going to work out for you, bud.
I've seen this play itself out in the past.
And usually you do not get that title shot. Well, he waited out long enough that Brock Lesnar dropped out. There's really nobody else that could have done it. Stipe Miocic, welcome back, buddy. You're back on the team. I don't want to lay minus 145 on Cormier right now because I am worried that the guy hasn't been taking anything too seriously. He's had his whole life has been very, he's been questioning a whole bunch of things. Whether he's going to get the Brock Lesnar fight, is he ever going to fight John Jones? I don't even think Stipe Miocic was in his
absolutely
his mentality. He's been doing all the broadcast stuff, and he's great at that. But this time off at this age for a guy who's already talked about having wear and tear on his body and stuff, I don't really want to lay the juice on DC, even though we've seen him knock him out. It almost feels like a trap to me. Leaning towards Stipe Miocic. I wish I was a lot more affirmative on this fight, but I think Stipe is going to be super, super hungry. He's coming in probably training his ass off when he got the opportunity to come back here, get his belt. I think his reach and his mobility may actually work in his favor this time, as long as he doesn't get clipped hard in the pocket like he did the first time. But Daniel Cormier, undefeated at heavyweight, obviously completely live, but the way the line is right now, I'm kind of leaning towards Stipe to get some redemption.
You know what? I actually do agree with that. I agree that what have both men done since then? You talk about Daniel Cormier's layoff. Well, Stipe is the one that's been off over a year, whereas at least Cormier fought that fight with Derek Lewis. But that fight concludes. Stipe versus Cormier won. And he knocks him out. Kind of not early, but it's he catches him early in the fight. People want to see it progress. People didn't know what was going to happen. It's a definitive statement, but it's also it's the kind of thing you could run back. You just defeated the heavyweight champ, a guy that had the most title defenses. He was a guy that was kind of looking to be that top heavyweight of this generation, of this era. You beat this guy in that convincing fashion, and a lot of people are down with the rematch. First thing Stipe says is, "You owe me one, man. You owe me one. Give me the rematch." He's chomping at the bit. I want to fight you again. Whereas Cormier's first instinct is, no way, we are not doing that again, not running it back. And in fact, I would rather fight pro wrestler Brock Lesnar, who has not fought since a steroid doping fight over Mark Hunt, which he did thrash Hunt, at UFC 200. I would rather fight that guy. So it's not about legacy. It's about, I'm 40 years old.
Yeah, make that money.
A lot of people had me as the underdog to Stipe. It's going to be a tough fight. I clipped him. I put him away. I don't want to run this back again because chances are it's going to be tougher the second time around. I don't want to run it back. I would maybe rather fight John Jones than have to fight Stipe again. But I would definitely rather fight Brock Lesnar. But then they offer him this Derek Lewis fight, and it's a favor to the UFC. They need a headliner. So he takes the Derek Lewis fight. And even though he smashes through Derek Lewis, it's interesting afterwards where he's like, man, that power. He hit me one time, and I was having trouble seeing out of that eye. That one shot seemed to wake him up. And when you look at Cormier versus Stipe you get the impression that like, oh man, once he gets his hands going, he's going to hurt Cormier. Problem is, he just never gets himself going. Cormier knocks him out. Since that Derek Lewis fight, okay, Cormier thinks he's getting the Brock Lesnar fight. And even though that should motivate you to go out and put in a huge camp, he's not sure if he's getting the Brock Lesnar fight. And it's also Brock Lesnar. So what you notice in all the interviews and all the panel desks and him going to do these different shows and this and that is that like he got really out of shape. Now, Daniel Cormier is a guy that doesn't have a fighter's body and he's never been known to have those abs, but like he's 40 years old. He has a family, he has kids. He's won the interim light heavyweight title. He's won the heavyweight title. He's one of the greatest fighters of all time. He really is. He's not better than John Jones for obvious reasons, but he's one of. It's like, what more does this guy got to complete? You know, I'll have a fun rinky-dink fight with Brock Lesnar to get it out. It's a little circus sideshow, but I'll get paid a big payday, and maybe I'll take that John Jones fight as a career ender. But Stipe is the farthest thing from it. And then the Brock fight falls through, and now all of a sudden he gets cold feet on fighting John Jones a third time. Now you're seeing him with interviews saying, yeah, it's not definitive that I would fight John Jones a third time. Maybe Daniel Cormier, as good as he is and as great as he is, and there's no reason to believe that he's regressed in the year that he's been off because, quite frankly, he's shown, no inclination towards that. But I got a bad feeling that all the things that we thought Stipe would bring in the first fight, which is he's got enough wrestling to keep the fight standing, he's a better boxer, he's a bigger boy, and he's just going to be able to take him into some deeper waters. Maybe all that proves to be true this time around. But when you get knocked out in the first round and you book an immediate rematch, Cormier should be at least a 2-1 favorite over Stipe Miocic. So if I'm a Cormier supporter, and there's a lot of them out there, 145 is a fantastic price tag. If I'm a Stipe guy, yeah, I was going to bet him anyways, and it's still dog money, so I'll still bet him. But I was really hoping to get more. Plus 145, plus 155, plus 165. So now I've got a problem. If I'm going to price this as it is right now, 45, 125, I'd say it'd be $8,600 Daniel Cormier, come back $7,800 on Stipe Miocic.
It would be 86.76.
86.76.
It always adds up to 16 too.
You're right. So 86.76.
That's actually, believe it or not,
is that what you wrote down?
What I wrote down.
Well, there you go. Well, we're on the same page. So Daniel Cormier just knocked this guy in the first round. And
I think both guys, you're going to need the winner of this fight.
You're going to need the winner. And this is a close fight to break down because you can't just go by in recent history. Yeah. Recent history is Cormier knocks the guy in the first round. But I do get the impression this will be more competitive. And if Cormier can stretch him, if Stipe can get it to later rounds, who knows? We still haven't seen Daniel Cormier at heavyweight go 3 hard, go 4 hard, go 5 hard. We've seen him smoke out Stipe in the first round. We've seen him smoke out Derek Lewis early. So where will that cardio hold up? Probably pretty good. His cardio at light heavyweight's held up pretty good, but we just don't know. So I would be chasing that dog price.
Cool. We got Anthony Showtime Pettis taking on Nate Diaz. Pettis minus 130, Diaz plus 110. Who you got?
Yeah, when Diaz lost to Conor McGregor the last time and proceeds to then take 3 years off, talks a little shit on the sidelines, rumored fight with Dustin Poirier, sorry. Sometimes it looks like he puts in a camp and he gets in really good shape. Sometimes he lays off. He's 34 now. This is an instant fade. Like 100% you're going to fade Nate Diaz. The problem is that especially in the manner that Anthony Pettis won his last fight over Stephen Thompson, I knew I was going to instant fade Anthony Pettis going forward. So now them being matched up against each other is a tough one. Do you go with Nate Diaz, who's got obvious size on him, a better ground game, better pressure fighter, but he's been off for 3 years, Paul? And how motivated are you to come back to the UFC now at 34 years old, taking on guys that aren't Conor McGregor for a fraction of the paycheck? That I just don't know. An unmotivated Nate Diaz is one of the worst fighters in the UFC. The skill's there. There's nothing else there. Whereas a motivated Nate Diaz, this guy's actually a legitimate challenger. We see what he can do when he's on. So there's a little bit of a question mark there. Anthony Pettis, meanwhile, not built for 170 at all. And losing the fight to Thompson, not doing anything, not getting up, got the leg kicks going. But then that Superman punch just changes everything. It's like it breathes new life into him. He looked till that point shot. Hadn't been looking good in the UFC. Hadn't been looking good now in this transition to 170. Things aren't going. Couldn't make 145 comfortably. 55's past him. Now he's just undersized. It's not looking good for him, but he pulls it off. That gives him a little something. Nate Diaz had a career resurgency by beating Conor McGregor. Before that, the fight with Michael Johnson, he looked good. But you also got the unmotivated Nate Diaz as much as you got the motivated one, and it just wasn't a precise. So now you got both these guys, even though one's coming off a win and one's been off 3 years, still a crossroad bout. Like one of these guys is going to win this fight and get another money fight or another big fight against another veteran or a top prospect. The other guy loses this. Like if Nate loses this, he's not coming back because the payday will be even worse the next time around. And first fight in 3 years, you lose, it's done. He'll do what his brother Nick did, and that's talk some shit on the sideline, but never really commit to coming back. Whereas if Anthony Pettis loses this, it's like you're just total non-factor. So we got minus 130 Pettis, or minus 130 Pettis, plus 110 Diaz. I'm going to go Diaz. Another dog play. It's a small dog play, but it's a dog or pass situation. Both guys got massive question marks. But the thing is that Nate Diaz is A, way bigger than Anthony Pettis. And B, Nate Diaz is much better on the ground. It's just that we don't often talk about his wrestling because it's like, what wrestling? It's mostly like judo trips. But if he commits to getting the fight to the ground and he gets on top of Anthony Pettis, he'll smoke him.
Yep.
If it stays standing, what I'm worried about is the same thing when he fought McGregor. Anthony Pettis is much faster than Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz is slow and plodding, flat-footed.
Yeah, he's just going to eat leg kicks all day.
And he's going to eat a lot of leg kicks. What we saw from Pettis in his last fight is he's got a nice leg kick game and he'll go to it. And with a slow plodding guy that stands upright like that and is just going to look at the counter, the leg kick's there for you all day. McGregor went to the leg kick, had some success. Do the same thing, replicate it, stay to the outside, dance around. It's just if Nate is motivated, then he'll walk forward. He'll march through that stuff and he'll tag him. And in marching forward, in pressuring him, I just don't think that Anthony Pettis is throwing enough at this stage. If you go to 170 and you don't have that one punch power anymore, he just literally one punched Stephen Thompson. So I guess I know how stupid that sounds, but I don't think his power is going to translate long-term at 170. And I don't think he's got the volume at 170. No. If main event gets scratched and this gets bumped up to 5, Nate Diaz all day. 3 is very intriguing to me because Anthony Pettis tends to quit the later fights go, but this is only 3 rounds. He could easily go up 2, let Nate have his classic 3rd round rally, and then still win a 29-28. Close fight, totally get it. I'm going to side with Nate Diaz ever so slightly. For a DK price, 8,200, 8,000 or what?
83.79, yeah.
83.79.
I kind of went through the whole card already, and
I'm going to say
it's all going to be around that range type of thing for sure. So, yeah, that makes it an interesting mid-range play for sure. The one thing I will say before we move on to the next fight is that I want to see Nate during the week leading up to this fight. I want to see him on the scales. Like, you remember back,
of course.
You remember back, I know it was at 155, so he's obviously going to look more shredded at 155. But when we took on Michael Johnson, we hadn't seen him in a long time.
Yeah.
We didn't know he was going to fight. And then he showed up, and you're just like, oh shit, Nate's in shape. Like, he had abs. He was looking very, very good for a Diaz brother. But Diaz brothers are never like,
they don't have abs.
But like, he actually had abs in that fight, and just like, all right, Nate's been training. Nate's been taking things seriously. I want to know before I play him that Nate's been taking things seriously, or is he just butthurt that he's not getting the McGregor fight and he's just showing up to collect a paycheck? That's the question I have, and I don't have an answer for that until we get closer to the fight. And I may not even have an answer.
I know. My last flip side argument to that is, if I told you that Nate had spent the week drinking in Cabo and not training, would it make a difference? Because we've seen this narrative with him before. Is he beat Conor McGregor the first time drinking in Cabo? The thing with Nate Diaz is he shows up in shape or not in shape or prepared or not prepared. At least one thing. Motherfucker's there to fight, you know? 100%. Whereas Anthony Pettis, and I always feel bad saying this because, I almost feel like I'm the coward for saying it. How could a prized fighter, a former champion like Anthony, how can you question this guy's heart? But it's like, I do. I very much so do. When shit gets dicey, his coach pulls him out or he voluntarily yanks himself out. If he catches you with some punch off the cage, power to him. But lightning's not going to strike twice. You're right, though. I'd like to see Nate Diaz on the scale. And if he's got at least 4 abs, I'll take him. If he's got 6, all day.
Yoel Romero takes on Paulo Costa, a fight that's been booked a ton of times. Finally, hopefully we're not jinxing it right now. This fight actually goes on at UFC 241. We have Yoel Romero minus 165 favorite. Paulo Costa, Borrachina is plus 145. What's your take here, Cody? You know what? This fight has been booked many of times. Yoel Romero is my boy. His style, second to none. He can out-wrestle anybody. His striking, it just seems like he's a step ahead of everybody in speed. And then when he does touch you, you just crumple. If it looks like he's having a bad... He's not Anthony Pettis. He could be gimping on one leg, and he will still knock you out. Like, he fights to the end. He's a soldier of God. Tremendous. This fight's been booked many of times, and every time in my head, I always thought
Paulo Costa is going to beat him somehow. He's a better striker. Keep the fight standing. Even though Yoel's so good at wrestling, he doesn't always go to his wrestling. You know, a lot of the times he'll just sit there and lull you to sleep and then explode on you. It's just I can't get that fight with Uriah Hall out of my head. Like, Uriah Hall gave you a go and touched you up, and everything that he did to you that night is now going to be exceeded 10 times by Yoel Romero. And we always talk about Yoel's getting up there in age, but like it doesn't actually seem to matter.
This guy is not built from the same cloth as the rest of us.
If his nickname wasn't Soldier of God, surely it would be Benjamin Button, because he's like it's a reverse aging process. He looked awful against Fei Zhao in Strikeforce 10 years ago. And now it's just like, man, he gets faster and faster every time. You know, like there's an argument that he beat Robert Whittaker and that he's the champ right now. All the guys that everybody wanted to see, you know, the Jacare fights, it's like he stood up to every test and he's passed it with flying colors. Guys that had cast iron chins, he knocked out. Like, he's done everything that's been presented to him. There's no reason why he should lose this fight. But again, at some point, age is going to be a factor and it is going to knock on him. And there's no doubt the end of his fights are super spectacular, but he is getting hurt in there. He is hurting himself. He's having terrible weight cuts. And those are only going to get worse. And with Costa, he's been off for a little bit, right? And he had himself a fake positive and he had this and blah, 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 blah. But he's young and he's getting better and he's going to pose a problem to Yoel Romero. So Yoel Romero at minus 165, I'm not really running to pay that price for him. Yeah, he should be the favorite. 35, 45 in for that. 65, no. And because he's such a big fan favorite, I do expect the line to actually start going a little bit more towards him unless something happens.
What's the deal with this like lawsuit though?
Okay, here's the deal with the lawsuit.
I know that company that he's supposed to get $29 million from, they don't have $29 million. So it's like, how much can you actually extract from that company? I don't know. I just don't, like, that company could actually have a net worth of like actual zero.
Yeah, so it's something like, was it $29 million or $22 million?
We're splitting hairs.
Let's say it's $22 million. No. Let's say it's $22 million. He sues. The court says you owe Yoel Romero $22 million. Okay, so the company immediately defaults and files for bankruptcy. Yeah. And then what would happen was that he would be lucky to recover 10%, which is 2.2. So he would get 2.2. He'd have to pay his lawyer. That's an easy $200,000. He's got to pay a couple other things. If he walked away with $1.5 million, everybody wins. His manager wins. His lawyer wins.
Oh, for sure they all win.
He gets his shit overturned. $29 million.
Yoel's not showing up for this fight if he got $29 million.
He got $22 million. Do you think he'd be fighting Paulo Costa of all people? He'd say, you know what? Offer me a title shot, I'll take it. Outside of that, fuck off.
Yeah.
Like,
I'll fight Conor McGregor, George St. Pierre, or Anderson Silva.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm only going to fight ludicrous money matchups. And Khabib if Russia really wants it that bad. But like, nah, dude, there's no chance I'm fighting this young, hungry lion when I've got that kind of money. But with Yoel, he is a fighter, and he's a fighter that really has got his eye on the title, which it makes this surprising because you think he could just pull a Stipe and sit on the sideline, but age is going to catch him eventually, and he must know that. So I don't know. It's an interesting dynamic all around. Like, this is the fight. Like, this is the people's main event. We've been waiting for this for a long ass time. And if we get the last version of Yoel we got versus the last version of Paulo we got, Yoel wins all day. But Yoel's regressing from that version. I do truthfully believe. It's slow. He's a freak of nature. He is the most athletic guy we've probably ever seen next to Kevin Randleman in the UFC, but it's going to catch up to him. Whereas Costa's young and he's developing, and he was shit 5 years ago, man. He was losing on the Ultimate Fighter against Alexander Almeida beat him. The guy was not good.
But he put on some size.
Got a little older. He's 27. Striking seems pretty good. He's got big power. If he hurts Yoel and causes Yoel to get...
Cardio's pretty good for a big boy.
His cardio checks out. Like,
at least in 3 rounds. If this was a 5-rounder, I'd be a little bit more concerned.
And then if somebody says, hey, dude, Paulo just got a false positive, so he's not going to be touching no juice, and that might affect him. It's like, yeah, well, you know, his opponent Yoel's got the fucking same thing. False positive. So like, that argument's at the window.
I priced this at $88.74.
$88.74. Yeah, I'm thinking tad bit cheaper on Yoel, but yeah, he's minus 165, 88.
Yeah, when you kind of go through the rest of the odds on the card.
No, I agree. That makes sense.
It's kind of what it seems like it'll be around, and I think that's an interesting fight. The problem with Yoel, really, really low volume and stuff until you get to round 3. And then he's a goddamn killer when you get to round 3.
Here's another situation where 5 favors Yoel because it's like he conserves energy really well and then gets you to at least.
But when you conserve energy like that, you run sometimes you just run out of time.
But he gives up early rounds. Even though Luke Rockhold fights, the same thing. Like he'll give you early rounds and come back. That's not a good idea against a young, hungry lion in a 3-rounder. So you're saying 88-74. I'll agree with that.
We got Corey Sandhagen taking on Rafael Assuncao. Same odds as Yoel Romero. Paulo Costa is -165, plus 145. I priced this at 87.75. I discussed it out because I was like, it's the same odds, but like, give me the middleweights, right? Give me these freaking these absolute destroyer of worlds. If I was put into a corner and had to do it.
Yeah,
right?
let me see the highlight reel from that fight, and then let me see the pre-fight highlight reel from this fight. I think Costa and Yoel got a better shot. Yeah, no, okay, I like it.
Yeah.
See, I like the pricing. Do you like Sandhagen? You went against Sandhagen last time. I told you not to.
I have to like him now.
Yeah, once you defeat, you got to beat the boy to be the boy.
Sunset's been a tough out for anybody in the division for years on end, but I think. Sandhagen was a former training partner of TJ Dillashaw. TJ Dillashaw seems to have figured out how to beat him on the flip side of, losing to him early on in his career. From what I saw from Sandhagen against Lineker, this guy can stick to a game plan, stay on the outside, pick people apart from the outside. Rafael Assuncao is a solid competitor he's so well-rounded and everything like that, but I gotta... Sandhagen impressed me against my boy Lineker. I don't think that this matchup's that much more difficult. Obviously, Assuncao is more well-rounded, but Lineker is more dangerous in terms of the power of his shots and the amount of shots that he throws at you. John Lineker is a tough guy to get the game plan on, and Corey Sandhagen, it was close, but he passed. And he gets my vote of confidence here against Rafael Assuncao, who he's getting old. He's getting old for this division at this point.
I hear you there. I hear you. I feel like he's another guy where the writing's on the wall. It's not necessarily there. Yeah, he got shock rocked and dropped against Marlon Moraes, eventually submitted. But outside of that, it's like you can't point to any obvious decline in his skill set. It's that man, his best years are probably 2016, 2017. He had that win over TJ Dillashaw. He beat Aljamain Sterling. He beat Marlon Moraes. And then he got a really nasty ankle injury. And since then, it's like it slowed him down. He's slower in the division. Could he out-grapple Corey Sandhagen? Yeah, I think that's the path. I think you got to force Sandhagen to the ground. John Lineker has got he does not want that fight on the ground. He wants to line you up with a big hook and take your head off. You got to fight a perfect 15 minutes against this guy or he'll knock you out. Sandhagen's chin checks out. His fight IQ checks out. His skill set checks out. But that's a purely striking battle. If Rafael Assuncao is able to get him to the ground, maybe that's the area that you think, geez, maybe we have some trouble here. His prior fight, he fought Mario Batista. Mario Batista does succeed in taking him down, but he armbars Batista from his guard. That ain't going to happen against Rafael Assuncao. If Rafael Assuncao takes you down, you're up Schitt's Creek. Like, you're probably going to be in some trouble. I think it's not a passing of the torch because Sandhagen's already running with it, but Rafael should be passing his contender status to the next wave.
Yeah.
Here you go. Marlon beat me in the rematch. TJ beat me in the rematch. I had those initial wins. If I fought Aljamain Sterling again, he would beat me in the rematch. My best days are behind. I can prove a stiff little test for a young up-and-comer, but that's about all. That should be the narrative. That should be what happens. But again, that ground game just makes me ever so slightly just a little bit off. Now, flip side to that, I am picking Sandhagen. And when I think about the pricing that we're going to put on at $8,700 for Sandhagen's got power, and he's sharp, and he can knock a guy out. And Assuncao's traditionally had a cast iron chin. Guy can take a punch. Has been knocked out, but you know what I mean. But it's that last fight against Marlon, and you get the sense that these more dynamic, fluid strikers, when he doesn't get to them ground, they're gonna clip him. When they clip him, it's gonna make him pay. And then you nailed the last point. Yeah, he's a long-time training partner with TJ Dillashaw, as in they've grown close over the last year or so before TJ's EPO testing. But I mean, like TJ and Dwayne and those guys, like they wrote the book on how to beat. They lost to him the first time. And then they wrote the book on how to defeat this guy, and then like it wasn't even competitive the second time. But it wasn't even like, I'll just knock this guy out. It's a quick, you can't take it. It's like I'll defeat this guy in every aspect of MMA. Sandhagen should be able to do the same thing. That takedown defense really makes me worry. So as far as early dogs that I don't like, yeah, Costa's got a shot, no doubt about it. And I am going to take him as a dog. I got Nate Diaz, he's a dog. I got Stipe, he's a dog. I'm 3 for 3 on dogs. So Assuncao, I'm not chasing no dog here. I will take Sandhagen, but I fully understand that there are some risks here. And 87.75, I think that's also pretty spot on.
We got Ian Heinisch taking on Derek Brunson. Ian Heinisch is minus 175. I priced him at 8,900.
Yeah.
Only an odds play, basically.
But I wouldn't
Derek
play
Brunson
it.
is 155 and obviously priced at 73. Yeah, I wouldn't play either one of these guys at this price, to be perfectly honest. Heinisch has proven good enough in grappling. I don't think Derek Brunson, I know he took down Yoel and stuff in the past, but like
Once upon a time.
sure, but like I don't see him like just dominating from a wrestling standpoint in this fight. And Heinisch, though he's came through as a dog and been a darling of the betting community, this is a top 10 guy. I think Heinisch gets through this fight, but I don't see him scoring a ton. I don't think you're going to need him on DraftKings. The problem, maybe he can clip Derek Brunson, but Heinisch isn't exactly a world-class like power puncher. That's not how he wins. He wins by grinding, tiring you out, and just imploring his will on you. And I think that all adds up. When we've already priced Sandhagen and Yoel and these other guys in that price range, it's going to be really hard to play Ian Heinisch at 89.
Yeah, Heinisch at 89, I agree with you. I agree in the pricing in that he's a bigger favorite than the rest of those guys, and that's kind of how DK does it. If it was me personally, I'd have him no more than 8,400,
exactly.
Which is why I wouldn't play him for the pricing, depending on what it ends up being. But Heinisch is a serviceable guy. We were talking about Dana White Contender Series veterans that are not ever going to win a championship, but hey, these guys should be in the UFC anyways. They should be middling away on some Contender Series shows where you're seeing this season, it's almost all those guys. Heinisch is credible. Heinisch is proven. Heinisch did fight at a good level in LFA, win a title before coming over to the UFC. Got good cardio, got good wrestling, trains at Factory X Muay Thai in Colorado. Like, you know what I mean? Good backstory. It's all there for him. But he has been getting fights that kind of do favor him, right? The Cesar Ferreira fight. Cesar Ferreira is a front runner. His wrestling's not all particularly good. If he can't submit you early, you'll have your way with him. Heinisch does. Antonio Carlos Jr., he's a front runner. He's going to try to get you to the ground. He's going to try to choke you out. If he doesn't, you could have your way with him. And in many ways, Derek Brunson's the exact same way. He's a front runner. He's going to try to have his way with you in the early beginning, and that's it. Only he's definitely tried to change that aspect of his game. He used to just bum rush you, plow you with 15, 20 punches in the head, and knock you out. Can he wrestle? Absolutely. But he uses so much energy in everything. He takes down Yoel, not even fluky takedowns. He took down an Olympic silver medalist, I think 3 times in that fight. 2 times, huge. But I think he scores 3 takedowns in that fight. And then he's completely out of gas in the 3rd round because it's like, oh yeah, I was trying to take down an Olympian consecutively. Since then, it's like you see those big moments where he bum rushes out against Uriah Hall, or he bum rushes out against Ed Herman, or he bum rushes out against Sam Alvey. I mean, he even gave Robert Whittaker a go. But ultimately, it's like once that doesn't work, he just completely falls apart. He tried to change against Anderson Silva, and it led to a terrible fight he should have won that they gifted to Anderson Silva. His last time against Elias Theodorou, he kind of attempted to do it again, but it was also Elias just running away. He kind of had
crowd booing Elias.
Yeah. But as bad as that fight was, like he didn't look good.
No, he didn't.
And that was probably the best he's looked in a little bit. So now you got him going against Heinisch. It's like, it doesn't make sense. Brunson can take Heinisch down. I expect him to take Heinisch down in the 1st round. But Heinisch this is the classic every time. He probably loses the 1st round. The 2nd and 3rd round, he makes you pay. On his Contender Series fight, he takes on Justin Sumter. He gets taken down and he gives up his back in the 1st round. But again, just like his other 2 fights in the UFC, he'll probably lose the 1st round and then he'll get going. And Brunson just fits that mold to a T. So Brunson's a dog with a shot. But this is a card that so far we've underlined the fact that like these are good dogs. These are name brand dogs.
With the past with a guy like Heinisch, the guy has been to Riker, so he's not going to let you finish on his back.
No, exactly. This guy you never let it get sunk in, Paul, okay? And I ain't even talking about the choke, homie. You never let it get sunk in. And in this case, he's in precarious situations sometimes, and it's just like, nope, you can't put him away. As Dave Chappelle would say, night night, keep your bum hole tight. So that's why you don't go night-night, Holmes. You don't fucking tap. You don't go to sleep. You fight to the death, which is something that obviously Ian Heinisch does best. I'm going to say Ian Heinisch wins. The one thing is not only do I not like the pricing that we've attributed him for DK, I don't like the minus 175.
No.
45 in 35, I would love it. But I can't overlook Brunson with a guy that's middling top 15 at best versus a guy that legitimately was a top 10 guy. He's just hasn't been fighting to his potential. He is also getting older, but the reflexes still seem there. His chin's always been terrible, but Heinisch is not the big power puncher, like you said. So an intriguing fight to say the least. I will take Heinisch, but I'm going to pass as a value standpoint.
Yep, same here. All right, we got Sadiq Yusuff taking on Gabriel Mowgli Benitez. Sadiq Yusuff minus 355. I priced him at 9,400 on this card, just because of an odds play. Gabriel Mowgli Benitez plus 295, and he is 6,800, respectively. I think Sadiq Yusuff. I'm impressed. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid.
Everybody's darling.
To a degree here. I don't want to lay this price though, because Gabriel Benitez is formidable. He's good on the feet. He's
Kicks
very,
like a
very
mule.
solid. He's not going to let himself get into... We've seen Sadiq Yusuff, like, when he really gets after it, he is like it starts turning into a brawl, and he is crushing guys in these brawls. I think Gabriel Benitez kicks like a mule. He's going to stay at distance. I don't know if... I don't have their reach or anything in front of me. I imagine Sadiq Yusuff is quite a bit bigger, but... It's going to be a pass from me. It's going to be a pass on DraftKings if it's priced up at like this type of thing, like 9,400. I do see him winning. I think Gabriel Benitez is the type of guy that kind of makes you earn that victory. And I think the prices are a little bit too wide for my liking here. What about you?
Yeah, I got to go with Sadiq Yusuff. I'm one of those guys that's buying the Kool-Aid as well. And you know what? I do agree in the fact that it's like 355. And Benitez is one of those guys, like when you do overlook him, yeah, that's when he makes you pay. Like, he's a serviceable guy. He's been at AK the last 5 years. Again, when you have Javier Mendez saying this is the hardest guy that's ever kicked pads for me, like this is the hardest guy I've ever held pads for as they're kicking, you know, that says something. Then you see him in his fights. It's like, yeah, he does everything good, just nothing great. It's with Sadiq Yusuff, it's that I would think you got to get this guy to the ground. I think that would at least have to be part of the game plan. You can strike with him. He'll brawl with you. He'll give you openings. You can touch him up. We've seen the guy get touched up, but it's like, that's what he wants. Like, that's kind of what he thrives in. And then he is a Lloyd Irvin guy. So if you do take him to the ground, like, he's apt on the ground as well. You know, we got this little rush recently of like, well, you got Kamaru Usman, you got Sadiq Yusuff, you got Kennedy Njoku, and I mean, like, Nigerian prospects. Nigeria wasn't a country known for producing these high-level mixed martial artists, but now they are. Now they're starting to get on the map. And what we're seeing from all these guys is like, the athletic specimens. Yeah. Sadiq's the same way, but now he's getting experience. Now he's getting more comfortable in the UFC. They're not giving him necessarily easy fights. You know, his last fight against Shayman Moraes ended up just getting knocked out by Fili. I get that. But, you know, here's a tough guy. Here's a divisional gatekeeper, so to speak, in that he's not going to challenge for the title, but he's going to give you a tough outing. And he does give him a tough outing. But you're seeing Sadiq, I believe, progressing and getting better. And he's still young and he's heading in the right direction. What does Gabriel Benitez do better than Sadiq Yusuff? I don't think anything. Yeah, he's got the kicking power, but what's he going to do? Kick at the lead leg and slow him down? As far as the boxing goes, Benitez is southpaw. He's got good boxing as well. I just feel like Yusuff will just do enough to outpoint this guy, keep him going, And Sadiq doesn't have the biggest, like, killer one-shot put you away. That fight with, Mokhtarian, kind of an early stoppage, even though he hit him with 20, like, big, clean shots. It is an early stoppage. But with Benitez, like, you know, you can catch this guy. You can go out there, you can fluster him, just like the Andre Fili fight. You know, make this guy work, make this guy pay. Catch him with something he doesn't see coming. So I got Sadiq. The 355, again, I just can't do it. The 9,400 that you're suggesting, yeah, it's going to be that high because he's a 3.5 to 1 favorite. Yeah,
because there's only a couple people that... Well, there's one fight that would even odds on it yet. I'm just assuming he's going to be a wider favorite. And then you got this. Otherwise, everything's under 200.
It's under 200. So with Sadiq, it's like he couldn't put away Shayman Moraes, who then got knocked out by Fili. He couldn't put away Mike Davis, who you want to submit Mike Davis. You know, striking is tough. Maybe the finishing ability is not there, and I would need it for 9,400 because him just whitewashing him for 3 rounds and winning on a striking battle and say scoring 100 significant strikes, no takedowns, no ground transitions, none of that, no knockdowns likely unless he's going to knock him out. It's not going to get 9,400.
exactly.
So I would pass on that perspective. But I like him as a prospect. I do understand him being the favorite. It's just a little bit much.
Shayna Dobson takes on Sabina Mazo. Shayna Dobson minus 125 favorite. Mazo is plus 105. I price these two gals at 82 and 80. And this is just, I got nothing on this fight. I obviously haven't taped them. I know that they're both strikers. Mazo was like known for her head kick coming into this. Like they gave her an appropriate matchup if they think that she's going to be a star in the future. I don't know how you could think that after like her UFC debut, but
busted.
But she was a prospect before then. This is the perfect type of matchup for without doing any sort of tape whatsoever. I would lean towards Mazo here, but yeah, I'm not feeling great about it. Maybe if she returns to that knockout, head kick knockout type of style, this is the right opponent. 8,000 you could do a lot worse, but yeah, I don't feel great about this fight.
Yeah, no, I would take Sabina Mazo because underdog, sweet. I went from getting a ludicrous price on her as a favorite because of her LFA experience, where she's just knocking girls in the head, to an underdog status against Shayna Dobson, who's 3-2. Jeez, how could I pass on that? I would definitely be interested in checking it for that price. Sabina Mazo, her thing is that one, she's only like 22, 23 years old. She's extremely young, and she's out of King's MMA with Rafael Cordero. So there's no doubt about it that she's going to be getting better. She comes from a Muay Thai background. I believe she's Venezuelan, not Colombian. Venezuelan.
Sounds right.
I think she's Venezuelan. Yeah. Anyways, but her experience now coming to the States, training in the States, getting fights in the States, it's all going to benefit her down the road. I don't know that she's going to be able to get those benefits right away. So she looks good in LFA. She wins the title in LFA. They bring her to the UFC. Why you would give an undefeated 22-year-old fighter Marina Moroz doesn't really make sense, because Marina Moroz doesn't have an appealing name in the division anymore, but is iron tough, ironclad, has way more experience, and is a better fighter. But on paper, Marina Moroz is a one-dimensional boxer, and she struggled mightily against Marina Moroz in every aspect of MMA, I thought. Now we're going to downgrade to the most one-dimensional boxer in the division, Shayna Dobson.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all Dobson can do is swing punches. Dobson couldn't even beat Laura Mueller last time out. So, I mean, that's an instant fade and a half. Sabina Mazo, I totally thought she'd be like a 2-1 favorite. Busted prospect, but still better than Dobson. Clearly, the UFC is trying to give her a soft bounce back. But to get her at plus 105, I feel like you'd have to go for that.
Yeah.
Now, when you consider DraftKings pricing, okay, she's the underdog. I could get a good price on her. She's got this like history of kicking people in the head, but like Dobson's tough, man. She went to decision with Lauren Mueller. She got finished on tough by Roxanne Modafferi, but like on the ground, that ain't here. And then she went the distance with Nico Montano in a 2016 King of the Cage fight. So like she's okay durable wise. She just swings punches. She looked eyed against Ariel Beck, although that was, shout out to Poggy Rob, the nut low of MMA I've ever seen in the UFC. The worst example of UFC caliber. So it's like it's hard to get behind either of them. But Mazo's got a higher upside. Like Dobson's a correctional officer who's in her 30s, whereas Mazo's 22, training out of a killer gym, trying to get her shit going. It's just, she looks so green against Moroz. It's hard to back her. But then I think Moroz would smoke Dobson. It wouldn't even be a competitive fight. It'd be 6-1 morning line on Moroz before anybody steamed it. Like, it wouldn't even be competitive. So at least it's something she could take away out of that. I always say I like when a fighter suffers a loss early in their career and how do they bounce back. I just don't know that it's enough time for her to shore up all those gaps. Anyways, we'll see. But Mazo's the play.
We got Hannah Cyphers taking on Jody Esquibel. Hannah Cyphers minus 255 favorite. Jody Esquibel plus 215. Wait.
Classic Paul Shaughnessy would have said this is cranberry sauce. But then we also just maybe talked about cranberry sauce. But this other one has definite feel of cranberry sauce.
People in the betting community like this fight because Esquibel is 0-4 in the UFC.
Yeah, that's why it's the time to get her. She got a winnable fight here.
Oh, stop it.
She's got a winnable fight here.
You picked her, twice against Aguilar? Like, she lost to Jessica Aguilar.
Yeah, but that's because of the grappling. Now we take the grappling out of this, and which is what she has here. Dude. Now it's a winnable fight. You got to get that grappling.
I couldn't even bet Jody Esquibel with your money. Like, if you gave me money, I'd do anything else.
Could you bet Hannah Cyphers?
I mean, I don't have to bet Hannah Cyphers, but I would. I can't. No, Esquibel's old, slow. I don't even know what she's good at.
She's good at being plus 215. That's an intriguing price to find
She's a
out.
friend of a bunch of people at Jackson's. Like
She's married to Keith Jardine.
the Dean of Mean.
The Dean of Mean. The greatest bet Cody Saftic has ever landed was I won somebody's soul. Keith Jardine versus Chuck Liddell.
All right. Plead your case
With Esquibel.
for Esquibel because
Okay.
I just want the people to know I'm not on board with this. I couldn't tell you guys this, but he's going to.
Yeah, so she's a little meatball, short, stocky, compact, just wants to brawl. That's all she wants to do is brawl. And everybody she fights, no interest in brawling with you. Gonna take you down. She tries out for the Ultimate Fighter on the strength of a nice little winning streak. And she fights Ashley Yoder, who ended up being pretty okay. She beats Yoder, man. I thought it was a close fight, but I thought she won. Keith Jardine thought she won.
For sure.
The
Her
judges
mother probably did too.
The judges didn't think she won. She lost a split to Ashley Yoder to get into the house. So Invicta says, you know what? You look good. You're not going to the Ultimate Fighter. We'll sign you. Only they give her Alexa Grasso, who Grasso, not a grappler, I get that, but Grasso is just better than her. It is what it is. Then she fights Deanna Bennett, who's okay. She beats Bennett. Terrible split decision. But Bennett's a wrestler and a grappler. But then what are her losses, Paul? Carolina, a grappler. Jessica Aguilar, a grappler. Angela Hill, non-grappler, but just a better striker. So, that's the problem with Esquibel. She's not a grappler.
She's not good at anything.
No, you're right, dude. Not good at... All she can really do is brawl. They've either given her superior grapplers or superior strikers, like Angela Hill. What can you do with it? So, yeah, she's 0-3 in the UFC, plus that tough loss. Kind of makes her 0-4 with the company. Not looking good. The win is a split over Deanna Bennett in Invicta. Mega fade. Want nothing to do with this. I totally agree. It's just when you watch Hannah Cyphers, namely that last fight, especially against Paula and Vienna, it's like she's got no reach. She cuts no angles. She does not move her head. She, in fact, gets outstruck by Polyana Viana and then somehow still gets the decision. I thought she won. I thought it was a right decision. But she did not look good at her one thing that she's supposed to do good at. She did not look good. And I know what you're saying. Esquibel, what's her one thing? Striking? When does she look good at that? It's like, I get it. But we've got two equally, in my opinion, equally bad fighters who are going to be equally bad at the one thing that they both intend to do for this entire fight. Only one of them can be had at plus 215. This is not dog or pass the dogs plus 130. This is dog or pass. And one of the dogs is plus 215. That's very juicy. Now, Esquibel has got a massive history of letting everybody down. Except for Keith. He's got her back. He's a good husband. He's a stuntman now, too. And a little bit of an actor.
He's got the look.
Fuck, does he ever?
Yeah, I can't do that. It's just
we'll
crazy
agree.
talk.
We'll agree to disagree. You agree.
I
agree
that
you can't get on board.
I'm not.
But you ain't laying 255 on
I'm not
Cypher.
laying the juicy. I've seen some people. I've seen some people on Twitter be like, "Oh, they're totally setting up Hannah Cyphers. This is like a promotional thing." It's just like, did you see her interview after the Contender Series? It's just like they are not trying to set her up for a marketing push here. Like she was so scared of the interview. She hardly said anything. She's kind of like a mute. She didn't really have a person.
She's talked about that. She's just like crippling anxiety of speaking in front of crowds.
Sure. This is not like a promotional push that is happening here. They're just like,
she's 9-3.
She needs a fight, and Jody's still hanging around. So give her another 12 grand. I'm picking Hannah Cyphers to win. I'm not laying the juice. I had it priced at 92.70.
92.70. Based on the price, yeah. I'm gonna say maybe 89.71. But here's the thing.
You mean 89.73?
89 would be 73. That's why I got you, Paul.
I would take round that to a 2.
I would take that poke plus 255 on Jody. Cash game play would be the only way to roster her.
And by the way, we already priced Ian Heinisch and Derek Brunson at 89.73. So
yeah.
So one of them's got to be it. But yeah, it's with the odds and stuff. That's kind of why I kind of stacked it this way.
One's almost
but
certainly
that is a straight up stay away if that's how this thing gets and it ends up game price.
I would expect this one to go 15 minutes, 29-28 for either one of them. That remains to be seen. And the striking stats would be like
I guess
63 to 57.
it is dog or pass. I'm just passing.
And it's a hell of a dog, but okay, fair enough.
We have Kang taking on Brendan Davis. Kang is 185 minus 185. Brendan Davis is plus 160. I priced these guys at 91.71. Who you got?
Kang is my boy, Mr. Perfect. The second greatest Mr. Perfect, next to obviously my boy Kurt Hennig. But yeah, dude, like he's the skills there. He's fighting limited amount of opposition, but he seems very strong, very athletic, good ground game. Goes for it. He just needs to develop. He needs to shore up a couple holes. We'll be good. Then he takes that military service, and that's what threw me off big time. Is that like he looked like a decent prospect prior to the Korean military service, which pulled him out of action for like 3+ years. Comes back to the UFC against Guido Canetti. I wouldn't say he looked fantastic, but he triangles him in the first round. So first round submission, good enough. Then the fight with Ricardo Ramos, I thought he won. Ramos ain't so bad, not so good. But it's a close fight. He loses a split. And then his last fight against Teruto Ishihara, it's like Ishihara's got a problem in his grappling defense, and namely his takedown defense. And he doesn't have a good energy management. Kang should be able to run right through an opponent like that, because where his skill set lies is exactly what Ishihara doesn't do particularly well. And if he's able to apply that, he should get the easy win, and he does get the easy win. And now this is the exact same kind of matchup. Brendan Davis is a decent kickboxer. He comes from a football background, gets in with Alan Belcher's gym in Mississippi, and since then he's just kind of like a Jason Knight, or he's like a Chase Sherman. They're all from same gym. They all fight the same way. Good strikers. He's a kind of a long-rangey kickboxer. His ground game kind of leaves something to the imagination. We've seen guys like Barzola toss him around at will if they wanted to, but he's got heart. He's got good gas tank. And if you leave him in the fight, he might give you a tough third round. But I don't think his takedown defense is good enough. And that would be the problem here. Kang is a little faster than him, a little more athletic than him, but he'll only use his striking long enough to pot shot with the guy, long enough to get him to the ground. And I think that's the key to victory, is just get Davis to the ground. Clearly, this is the way to beat him. And that's exactly what Kang can and should do. And because he's not coming off this long military service now, he's now 3 fights back. Mm-hmm. He's now getting his momentum going again. Yeah. And at 31 years old, even though it's like, shit, dude, you probably gave up the prime years of your career to military service. 31 is when you look at the top 15 in every division and you break out the average age of a top 15 UFC caliber fighter.
They're right around there.
Is 30-31, right? So he should be in the prime of his career. He's got the ring rust shooken off, and he's got the skill set to beat Brendan Davis. So I would have to say Kang. As far as the DraftKings pricing, I
had 91.71, just based on how the odds shake out.
Yeah, he's plus 185, right? He's going to be more expensive than Yoel Romero. He's going to be more expensive than some of those high-end upper picks. But at the same time,
he's going to be pretty low owned, I would imagine, if he's surrounded by all those guys.
At the same time, yeah.
And if you like him to get the fight to the ground and find a submission against Brendan Davis, who that's his hole in his game, that seems like a viable play.
That's the viable play. The other thing is that when you look at his last three of his last 4 wins in the UFC by submission, right? We expect him to get Brendan Davis to the ground. It's just a question of, is he going to be able to submit Brendan Davis when he does get him to the ground? Brendan Davis, meanwhile, he got submitted by Zabit, who's ain't no shame in that. Barzola just had his way with him, tossed him around. Bochniak more or less had his way with him. He lost a fight to Dewan Pinckney, who was like 37 at the time. He's got, submission defense hasn't always been his best quality, and his takedown defense has been the biggest gap. I think those are both things that could be exploited by Kang. And if Kang's able to go out there and get that submission, then he'll get it. I'm just maybe ever so reluctant. I feel like there's just some better choices. I don't mind Kang. Mm-hmm. If I'm playing multiple lineups, I'm going to put Kang on some of them, especially chasing that low ownership, no doubt about it. But if I'm playing one single lineup, there's guys I have more faith in than Kang.
We got Manny Bermudez taking on Casey Kenny. Manny Bermudez is minus 150. Casey Kenny is plus 130. I priced them at 84 and 78 respectively. What you got?
Dennis Bermudez has been costing me thus far.
It's Manny Bermudez. Dennis Bermudez has also been costing me.
Dennis Bermudez retired, and he got the win. Thank God. But yeah, he got the win, and he was like, okay, that's enough for me. Dennis Bermudez is done. Manny Bermudez has been costing me because, man, you look at his career, like, before he comes to the UFC, and, like, he seems very dimensional with his jiu-jitsu off his back. Like they call him the Bermudez triangle, and he's got a good little triangle choke. But how's that going to translate when he comes to the UFC? So I fade him against Albert Morales because Albert Morales got some fights in the UFC, and he's actually not all that bad. And, you know, he fought the Weasel to a close competitive draw. Like, okay, I got Morales here. Morales had never gassed out before, but Bermudez he pushes the pace, you know, because he's continuously hunting submissions that you got to defend. You make one mistake, he gets the better half of you. He could have won that fight if he didn't gas out, but the pace prevailed for Bermudez, who's young, by the way, so he can kind of do those things. He wins. Okay, Davy Grant. All right, Davy Grant's been submitted before, but he's big for the division, and you know he's an okay wrestler.
I bet Bermudez.
You had Bermudez there, yeah. My mistake. I had Davy Grant. And then Davy Grant gets submitted with the Bermudez triangle in less than a minute. Okay, fair. 0 for 2 in this Bermudez kid. 0 for 3 coming up. Benito Lopez. Okay, but now Benito Lopez trains at Alpha
Also
Male.
gets choked.
Yeah, like everybody at Alpha Male knows how to take somebody down. Surely he'll just stuff this kid's takedown. And Bermudez cannot strike. Can't wrestle. Can't strike. The only saving grace he has is that submission game. And he takes out Benito Lopez. First round submission. So like, okay, Cody, learn your lesson. The guy's a submission ace, but he's not. He's young. He's catching these guys, and I can't get over it. Now, Casey Kinney, this is an extremely winnable fight for Bermudez, but Casey's never been submitted, and he just went 3 rounds of Ray Borg, who is going to pose as many threats, I think, in the grappling department as Manny Bermudez. So Casey Kinney, this is not going to be a very, I don't think it's going to be the most exciting fight. It's exciting if Bermudez finishes you quick with a submission, but if not, it's going to be a lot of Casey Kinney playing smart.
Casey Kinney was able to grapple and hang out with Ray Borg that entire time.
That's right? What I mean. It's like because he's got the grappling chops to survive, he can either force this to be a stand-up battle and he beats this kid in a stand-up battle, or he forces this into one of those Dustin Ortiz's, what are you doing, man? The guy's a black belt. But it's like I can just out-scramble him and keep myself safe. Casey also took that fight with Borg on like 3 days' notice and looked good. He can fight at 25. He can fight at 35. He's going to be a little smaller than Bermudez here. But if Bermudez doesn't have that offensive wrestling to get it. The other thing, too, is Bermudez, the only time we've seen him go past that first round is the Morales fight. He is gas, but he gets the submission. The other 2 fights are first rounders. Casey Kinney's got a tendency to pull you into deeper rounds because he's got 5-round cardio, and he'll rely on his 5-round cardio. So I think Kinney gets the job done.
Fight.
It's a very, very interesting fight. Casey Kinney's the underdog. This is a card with some good underdogs, but that's one that I like. The pricing on him, the only thing is that he might just go through the rhythm. Like, do you remember Ronnie Yaya versus Ricky Simon? It's like you could do more, but why would you? This is the move, what you're doing.
If you get those takedowns, that's when you go into the Bermudez triangle.
Yeah, so like...
That's how you get in danger. So it's
it
like
could be
you
like...
grind up against the fence. You just make sure you keep your neck out of danger while you're grinding up against the fence. You do some dirty boxing on the inside.
You don't throw a 5-punch combination because he'll probably duck under one of them and come at you. You land 1-2s. You land jabs.
So may not... Even if he gets the win, he may not score well.
Yeah, so he's a
Whereas
dog.
Manny Bermudez, if he wins, he scores well.
He'll be good DK value, but if the points aren't there, then what's the value? Whereas, Bermudez has shown us, clearly shown me by this point.
If he wins, 100 is easy.
If he's going to win, that 100 seems to be like the guy's basement, right? Like that's his floor for him. So, buyer beware. Cody don't have the best record running with it. The only guy that has burnt me more than Bermudez would have to be Claudio Silva. Would have to be Claudio Silva.
It may be wise just to not bet this one.
fair
is what
fair
you're
enough.
saying, and not
fair
so
enough.
many.
Yeah, but because it's a dog that I don't mind. This is a dog card. This is one of those cards. If Pogi Rob was to actually hit a 12-fight Pogi Rob parlay, they wouldn't give you Pogi no more. They'd be like, this motherfucker driving a convertible. Why are we sending him Pogi checks?
We got Dracagoclos taking on Christos Giagos. Dracagoclos minus 185. Christos Giagos plus 160. I priced Dracagoclos, who is because of his odds, I priced him at $9,000, which is like 100% do not play range for Dracagoclos. Like I just don't. He could fight 2 times and not return value at that price.
Sure.
And then Christos Giagos
He's
plus
in a
160,
one-night tournament. You're not playing.
plus 160 and 72. I think a lot of this ends up staying on the feet. I think Christos Giagos wrestling is able to keep it that way. Giagos is a underdog that I'm interested in. You've been kind of like you seem to have a better grasp of Christos Giagos in general than I do, though. So plus 160 seems like some value to me for a guy who probably isn't as explicitly talented, but may be able to keep this fight real close. All Dracagoclos' fights are very, very close. And Christos Giagos, you're given some, if you think it's going to be a close fight, plus 160 on something that goes to the judges' scorecards and you think split decision is possible, I think Giagos may have some value, but I want to hear your words first.
You know what? It's similar in the sense that if you were to label this fight as a dog or pass, it's not a cheap dog. It's Giagos' plus 160. And we hammered him last time out over Damir Handzovic at plus 145, and it proved to be the good move. The thing is that Handzovic absolutely can't wrestle, whereas he's got an opponent now in Dracagoclos that knows how to wrestle. Giagos, he took that fight on short notice too against Damir Handzovic. Like I remember he was at his sister's wedding in Hawaii or some shit, like not even training. But he's super frantic with his motion, with his movement, with his energy. Like he just, everything is fast twitch muscle, bam, 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 as hard as you possibly can. And as Robin Black would say, he spends all of his energy on the swim there, leaves none left for the swim home. That's just kind of how he is. What has been saving him, I think, in the last 2 fights is that by the time he completely blows out all of his energy, he's up 2 rounds. Against Mizuta Harada, you can bank 2 rounds. It don't matter. You just defend yourself, you'll be okay. That last fight against Handzovic, it's a sweater, dude. The first round he wins because of his wrestling. The second round he wins because of his wrestling, but he is extremely gassed at the end of that second round. And then in the third round, Paul, he crumples right over. He shoots a takedown, it gets stuffed, and then he just bails to his back. Handzovic has like 4 minutes of top pressure on him, but can't put him away. So he wins another 29-28 decision. All that motion, it's gonna work against guys that can't wrestle because that blast double, that big blast double, it'll work in the first round. In the second round, it'll work, but less effective. In the third round, it will not work. He's got no plan B. His striking, again, he strikes the same way he wrestles. Everything is with it. All his intent behind it. He throws his hooks with everything he has behind it. His straight right, everything behind it. A lot of the times he'll throw his combination only to just shoot a blast double into you. But it's too much. A 29-year-old guy, he had 2 runs in the UFC now. He's fought in Russia. He's fought all across the globe. You'd expect that maybe he'd slow it down a little bit. Maybe he'd not exert himself as much. Maybe he'd change the game plan. But coming off 2 wins in the UFC, he's not going to change it. That's just kind of how he is. So Dracagoclos is not impressive in any one element. But his takedown defense checks out. His striking's okay. And he just seems to be in close fights where I believe he just does a little more than his opponent. Against Giagos is going to try to take him down. I don't think it's going to work in the first round. It'll tire Giagos out. The second round will be a lot closer. Sorry, the first round could be Giagos, but it'll be close enough. The second round could be close, but it'll be Dracagoclos. And the third round is like Giagos ain't winning no third rounds, whereas Dracagoclos will have some in the tank. So we're sending both of these guys. It's a big fight for both guys, but ultimately the MMA lab will have the game plan set up for this one-dimensional wrestler who's just going
to win that third round.
Yeah, like we got guys in our gym that are going to just blast W all training camp, whereas Giagos, he's at a black house. Like this is what he does to them. They don't do it to him. At the MMA lab, you come in with that shit, you wait and see what happens, right? So it's going to be a different stylistical approach. Giagos will burn himself out early, which will lead to close to getting the win by decision. And I would not play the 185. It's a little too dicey. But the only way you get better than that, take close by decision. But as far as the DraftKings pricing go, yeah, they're going to make it at least that 9,000 range because he's a minus 185 favorite. And even if it's a few hundred at the very best, he's 8,800. This is not a guy who scores a lot of points. So
yeah, I think the price
you want
that
to
I
pass
would even
on this
consider
fight.
playing him at would be, I would need him as an underdog, to be honest. Based on his fight style, I would need him to be like 7,500. That's when you would start being like, you'd start considering him as a play.
Yeah, but Dracagoclos is
an easy fight to fade.
Dracagoclos is a boring fighter, and Giagos is an exciting fighter. And when they meet, I wonder what kind of fight it's going to be. But boring fighters
is probably better.
Boring fighters usually
make it boring.
Yeah, boring fighters usually win those matchups because they're boring for a reason. They win. They have game plans. They stick to it. They don't just brawl and go for guts or glory, which is what Giagos does. Don't think it works here. So give me close by decision.
Finally, we've got Devonte Smith taking on Clay Collard. No odds at the time of this recording on this fight, but I imagine Clay Collard's going to be a big underdog. Devonte Smith was already like a -300 or something like that favor. Who's he filling in for? Do you have that in front
I
of you
just
right now?
wanted to see if they had released a price, which it doesn't appear that they have.
Well, it wouldn't even be listed on. You'd have to click on his name. Let's just do it. Let's just do it on air.
No,
right
I
now.
just went on Best Fight Odds to see if they.
Yeah, but he won't. That fight won't even be listed on that website. Is what
No,
I'm saying.
you're correct.
So you have to go to the archive.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna write Devonte Smith. DE. Well, this is absolutely riveting stuff right here. Devonte Smith and Devonte Smith. So yeah, nothing. I don't see anything listed. Either way,
Yeah. Well, we'll
What do you
get
think he's gonna- what do
to
you-
set it ourselves.
what do you think it's gonna like?
It'll
Not
look-
even just be opened at. What do you think it'll settle at?
It should open at -400, and it'll settle at minus
600.
Yeah, at least. Here's the
So
thing.
here's
with,
the thing that
Yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of falls into line with what I have him as the most expensive guy in the card. I wrote him up as 96 to 66. We don't know about Devonte Smith's gas tank. We know he lost to John Gunter, and we got my boy Clay Collard coming in with that cast iron chin.
and a hell of a gas tank.
66
That kid can go.
All I'm saying, maybe I'm a little bit too much of. I'm happy to see Clay Collard back in the UFC for whatever reason. Maybe there's so many new faces that I'm just happy to see an old face.
It's nice.
return
It's nice to
to the
see
show.
the guy work his way back.
Yeah,
But especially, now it's
I
like
think he's gonna be a big underdog. And he's super durable. Now, maybe he's just so durable that he just takes an absolute drubbing, pounding from Devonte Smith. Devonte Smith ends up scoring the most points on the slate because Clay Collard literally just blocks every single punch with his chin. But what if he gasses? What if he gasses, catches Clay, able to clean up the dirt in round 3? Maybe. All I'm saying is I would be more inclined to play Clay Collard at 66, should that be the price, than I would Devonte Smith, because I'm crazy like that. And maybe a little bit of a fan. Clay Collard is not on the list of Paul Shag guys, capital G guys, but
yeah, he doesn't have the mold
if he
of
goes on
guy.
a bit of a winning streak as a big underdog, he could work his way into the fold. Scoggins is kind of working his way out, so Scoggins is probably not even in my top 5 anymore. So.
Yeah, well, he definitely let you down. See, Clay Collard was just like super entertaining. He'd go out there, his hands right by his hips, and he is the quintessential definition of a
Just
poor
bleed.
man's Dominic Cruz. Like he tries to move on like similar angles with his feet down, with his hands down, and just gets plowed. The guy can take a hell of a punch. His fight with Max Holloway, he's like 22 years old or some shit. They're both super young at the time. I want to say he's 1 year younger than Max Holloway. Like he's just a kid. He loses to Holloway. Totally no big deal there. Beats Alex White. And then he's a big favorite over Gabriel Benitez. But like we just said, Benitez, you can't overlook him. Collar's just a young kid. Clearly overlooked him. Kind of everybody did. That's why Collar went off as a 250 favorite
that's silly.
over Gabriel Benitez.
Yeah.
In Mexico, by the way.
Boy.
So he loses. The fight with Thiago Traitor, it's a split decision, right? Again, he's a -145 favorite. It's a split decision, close enough. They cut a 23-year-old kid that gave them 3 entertaining fights that was just literally went for it. He's action personified. Like, why would you let go of this kid? And then now that you see all the bums that they bring in, it's just like, man, he killed them. As soon as they cut him, he beat his first 2 opponents, and he lost to Derek Minner, who we just saw a couple weeks ago in Contender Series. But he gets caught in 31 seconds with a rear naked choke. Literally, he slipped. Minner jumped on his back, put him in a choke. So it's like you can kind of give him a bit of a pass, and then he wins his next 2 fights over Lucas
Took
Montoya.
a bunch of boxing matches.
Yeah, and then there's the other interesting thing, right? So he doesn't got a great boxing record. He's 2-1-3, right? 2 wins, 1 loss, and 3 draws.
This guy likes to just fight as much as possible.
Loves to fight. But here's the other thing, okay? So, he wins his debut in 2017. This is in 2019. This is the current year, Paul. He's already fought 5 times professionally as a boxer, okay? Tipton Walker was 6-0. He fucking fought him to a draw, right? This other guy here, Quincy Lavelas, he's 7-0. He fights him to a split draw, Paul. He's fighting undefeated prospects to draws. Never been knocked out in boxing. Cast iron chin in MMA. And one time he slipped up with a couple submissions. Like Holloway knocked him out, but it was late.
Yeah, it's round 3.
Yeah,
Late
exactly.
3-2.
Well, whatever. I really doesn't bother me at all. So like Collar can hang. The thing is that he's very, very hittable. And Devonte Smith, if he's got that one thing, it's like you absolutely 100% do not want to get hit by this guy. And so now I'm kind of like, Collar's coming on a short notice, but he had a fight booked, an MMA fight booked anyways.
Of course he did. He probably had 3 boxing matches also booked as well.
But see, that's my issue is that when he's 26 now, and one fight in the UFC pays as much as 3 boxing matches in an MMA fight back in Utah. So it's like he's just spreading himself real thin. I think he's doing some grappling on the side, and then he competes in boxing. Then he does MMA, and he's taking on someone, Devonte Smith, that's had a full camp, focus, big power. The fight with Julian Erosa touches him, he goes down. Dong Young Ma touches him, he goes down. Prior to that, Joseph Lowry on the contender series touches him. But those guys can't take a punch like Clay. So listen, you are not wrong. If Clay can extend him out into the second or third round, that's when it'll become interesting.
He just may not get
But
there.
he might take a lot of damage.
He is going to take a lot of damage. That's what he does.
Before he gets there, he might get seriously whacked.
This could be even like a live betting opportunity.
You're right. 10-8 first round Devonte Smith.
You get
Clay's face is sideways.
You get Clay to
Devontae's
you get Clay to the stool, and they're offering like a plus like 1,200 because you're just like, this guy's dead. Just giddy up.
Oh yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. Gunther can do it. So can Clay.
Exactly. Oh yeah, I don't think it's hard to pick him to win, but especially without odds or anything like that. But I'm assuming that he's going to be he's coming in on short notice against a guy who's just finishing people in the first round. I think Clay Collard's going to be a sizable underdog here. There could be some, especially, you would get like plus 1,200, plus 1,500. Like they could do something silly like that. This is like one of those spots that could happen like that.
Yeah, especially because Clay Collar's got this thing where like he'll get knocked down and he just gets right back up. Like he goes down and he pops up. So it's just like, after that first round, it's like, holy shit, dude, he got... It's just the same thing with like after round 1 of Nama Unison and Draj. I remember people being like, bet the 700 on Nama Unison, it's a lock. It's like, ooh.
Yeah, don't do that.
Ooh, I don't know. This could be the same thing. Like, dude, he dropped him twice. Collar's beat up. You just got to wait. Other than that, you could pass. Because, listen, this is a card that is just chock full of potential value. You don't got to bet 12 fights. You could pick 3 of them and make some serious dough. But to give you the quick recap, I am going to go with Stipe, who's going to be dog number 1. So we got Stipe. I'm going to go with Nate Diaz. Again, I get these are close fights. I'm gonna go with Paulo Costa, even though I'd love to see Yo win, not my bank account, but I am a Yo fan favorite. Sandhagen's gonna be a favorite. We're gonna go with Heinisch. Don't love the pricing. We're gonna go Sodiq. Don't obviously love the pricing there. We're gonna take Mazo. She's technically a underdog as well. We're gonna take Jody Esquibel.
Oh, stop it.
Yeah, we're gonna take Mr. Perfect, so he's a favorite. We're gonna take Casey Keeney.
6 underdogs.
6 underdogs, and then we're gonna take Dracagoclos, who's the favorite. And then at this point, you could take a 7th underdog and not be crazy in Clay Collar. But because it's also the very first fight of the card, if you put a $1 parlay that has 7 favorites in it and it would pay like 10 grand and it happened to lose, you could just rebuild the other 11 fights without it. I want to see the pricing. I want to see them on the scale. And I hear you. Sometimes it's like you break down somebody's skill set and it's like, okay, give it to me. It's like, dude, Devonte Smith, faster. It's like, okay.
For sure.
What about the power? Devonte Smith. It's like, what about the wrestling? Yeah, probably Devonte Smith. It's like, okay. Well, what about like the chin? Yeah, they both got good chins. It's just like, well, why are you taking the other guy? It's like, nah, he's got a good gas tank and like he brings it and like
got heart.
He's a wily sumbitch and like, you know what? Ultimately, you do give him the cardio advantage only because we've seen Smith gas years ago. Like it's very hard to assume what's going to happen. If it comes out
at minus 200, like we're not.
Yeah,
this is not even a discussion that we're having.
But it
right?
won't. It won't.
I'm expecting him to be a very, very big underdog. That's the only reason I would have any interest.
Very last thing I have to say is if it does open at 2, it'll be one of those things where the Greeks like, I totally hammered that soft opener. But it's like that line didn't exist, okay? They put it out there and then immediately $20 was bet and they were like, that $20 came in way too fast. Let's up the price.
Yeah. My crime syndicate actually leveraged a bunch of people's homes on that opener, which was only live for 37 seconds.
With the $50 max.
But it was my sharp money that pounded it all the way up to minus 1,000.
Sharp money, homie.
Little Cody Saftic. That was Cody Saftic. You can follow him on Twitter at CJ Saftic. You can follow me on Twitter at Paul Shag. Great to have a pay-per-view back again to really get us fired up. It's been a rough summer. A lot of intermittent or kind of questionable cards. Hopefully this kind of worked out. Hopefully this show isn't a complete disaster because all of the pricing was off and like
the fights
by the time we get here, there's no Daniel Cormier,
replacement
no
opponents.
Nate Diaz. It's just like Sabino Mazo is the main event of the card, and yeah, this show would be a complete wash. But anyway, for Cody, I am Paul saying goodbye and good luck.
That Mayo experience! Experience!